The Supreme Court could rule as early as tomorrow on whether or not to strike down President Trump's tariffs. These are the tariffs done under the International Emergency Powers Act. The president gives a warning on Truth Social saying a ruling could force the White House to pay back hundreds of billions of dollars in refunds. Putting it bluntly, quote, if the Supreme Court rules against the U.S., we're screwed. The market doesn't seem to think so. The market's not worried that this is going to be, if the court rules against the president's use of these powers, that the economy is screwed.
Well, it's interesting because just about every economist got it wrong on the front end. And so if they think reverting back is going to somehow work, we're going to be back to where we were. But we've talked about throughout this show, like, we need to bring manufacturing back here. We saw what tariffs have done to create asymmetric relationships with important nations like Taiwan, bringing TSMC foundries and building an additional capacity here. These are the projects that we need to be building in the United States. So I don't see a situation in which we end up better off. Now, was the Trump kind of go big and then pull back thing where we did need to land? Yeah. I think coming at 158% tariffs was never going to work over prolonged periods of time. But I actually do believe in the end his policies have worked favorably for the country. I do think that seeing this reversed could be problematic. And I largely think it's aligned to our bringing back jobs, manufacturing, energy capacity, and technological independence, which is going to be critical for this multi-decade economic leadership that we're trying to sustain around AI.
I agree with you. I think his overall strategy has worked out quite well. But I do think, as he says in the Truth Social, it will be a very big boondoggle if they strike down the tariffs and say you have to return the money. We've mentioned at least 5 ways on this show that the money has either been spent or planned to be spent already. Every time the president wants to do something, it's like, let's tap the tariff money. But in all seriousness, I also stand behind the integrity of the Supreme Court and looking at the issues, looking at IEPA, because I think this is important as we move forward. He's sort of put out there that you can use emergency powers to do certain things. And I think that the court really needs to look at that and set some bars and thresholds of what is an emergency, when these powers can be used. So
is our dependence on like an adversarial nation or in even a complex or complicated foreign relation an emergency? The fact that literally we would not be able to build the chips that we need if we did not change our policy. I'm just giving it for instance.
These are the questions. These are the questions the court has to look at. And there's not a lot of, I mean, there's some precedent, but no 2 situations are ever exactly alike. And I'm speaking in this vein, too, because I was listening to the oral arguments earlier being made to the Supreme Court in the transgender man wanting to play in girls' sports case. And it's fascinating for me to hear how they go about sort of picking apart at all of this stuff to get to the bottom line. They bring up other cases that were similar, and you have to sort of triangulate to figure out whether it applies here or not.
Brian, could we argue that maybe we won't be screwed if the court rules against us? Businesses will get certainty, and there are other ways in which the president can talk about tariffs and enact tariffs that will be more concentrated in scope instead of these broad-based. So is that not, could that not be a good thing?
Well, okay, so I am in the we're not totally screwed camp on this one. And there are a couple reasons for it. I do think that the Supreme Court's mostly going to rule against it. I've said that many times in this show. I still think that's the case. Actually, I think it'll be if there's anyone supporting the president on this, if they were consistent, it would be the liberal justices, because they didn't like the narrowing of executive power under West Virginia versus EPA, which I would think would cause them to support the president here. But they also probably don't like the president, so they might rule against him just for that purpose. But I do think they'll probably lose. You've told me before, Taylor, and maybe this is true, maybe it's not, but they'll probably find some kind of split the baby thing in terms of the money being paid back.
Yes.
That would help a lot in terms of the bond market falling out of bed about this. But the reason I think we're not, I think the president, maybe this is a little bit of marketing, but he's drastically underselling how powerful the other things he's done in America to bring manufacturing back. Tariffs are a part of that. There's lots of ways he can still do tariffs. He's got a lot of different codes under which he can do them. Scott Bessent has said as much, and he said, we're preparing that. So if we lose to the Supreme Court, we're going to do that. But I think that the saying we're screwed undersells, and I mentioned it before, it undersells everything else he's done from a pro-growth perspective in this country. And ultimately, I think that's going to carry the day and keep the economy strong, even if IEPA goes away.
The economics of what they're trying to do does not work if you do not have the backing of knowing these tariffs are going to be enforced. You will not see Apple build manufacturing facilities here at scale. It's just way more expensive. Even TSMC, they're going to build here. They have to, but they're doing it because the tariffs. That's the reason they're expanding at such a great rate and so rapidly here, is because the economics.
You don't think TSMC has anything to do with Taiwan or China and kind of like risk aversion to, where they make stuff?
At that point,
margins-
TSMC started building that facility in Arizona prior to the tariffs.
But the speed of which they're expanding has a lot to do in the commitments that they've made. You look at those multi-billions of commitments that have been made by a number of these different manufacturers to bring manufacturing to the U.S. By the way, the whole thing with Intel wanting to compete because you have some sort of domestic chip champion strategy, they knew if they didn't come here, expand here, and build here, their long-term opportunity. It was existential to these companies because at some point policy could override technological superiority, meaning if Intel could just build something good enough. So this does end up becoming a bigger problem. I do agree with you guys, by the way, of what's going to happen.
Well, 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum under Section 232, those wouldn't go away. And if you want to know why manufacturing has been in contraction for more than 3 years, maybe that's the reason.